Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Antlers, and this is a new horror film from director Scott Cooper, who has previously done films like Out of the Furnace, Crazy Heart, Hostels, and which I'm a huge fan of Hostels. I felt like that was a film that didn't get enough attention when it came out a few years ago, and now he's returning with Guillermo del Toro producing this horror film, focusing on a legendary creature, the Wendigo, and how it's haunting this Oregon town. And this young boy whose father's been infected, he's going to school, and things obviously do not look okay. This film focuses on a lot of the meth problems that happen in these rural, shut down mining towns, and you have Keri Russell's character, who's this young boy's teacher, who is alluded to that she's an alcoholic. She definitely was abused by her father, and obviously something happened recently where it's like she moved away from California, she moved back home, and there's tensions with her and her brother, who feels abandoned because Keri Russell had left when they were younger. And you have all of this going on in this young boy. His father's abusive, his mother has passed away. There's a lot of dramatic elements to these characters and adds a lot of depth for both of them, which that works. But the first act or so of this film, besides the opening sequence, which is drenched in dread and just this stark look at this broken down mining town, and that's one thing Scott Cooper does very, very well, is bring a very stark looking view of the world, and that works so well for this film. It sets up a lot of tension in the opening sequence. There's some good scares, but then it really takes its time. It takes almost half the movie for this to start kicking into gear again. There's definitely moments where they allude to some horrific things, and once those things start happening again, there's a lot more energy, but there is a decent amount of drama that's packed into this film to keep you going through that first half of the film. You have a fantastic performance from Jeremy T. Thomas, who's this young boy Lucas. He kills it in this film. Keri Russell does a fantastic job as his teacher. Jesse Plemons does a fine job as her brother, who's also the new sheriff. And, this falls into quite a few cliches of horror films, because you have Greene, who plays the Native American character, who's just basically like, I know all about this thing, let me tell you all about this thing, white people, and basically it's our conduit as the audience for us to figure out what the heck's going on in the movie, because that's always a really on the nose cliche. And then you get into the third act of this film when things really start hitting the fan. And there's a mixture of really, really disturbing and grotesque visuals. This creature, when you finally see it in its final form, is terrifying. And so well designed, works so well. They build up a really some great scares and set pieces, especially inside this mine. But some of the negatives, there's definitely one particular sequence that feels so dumb. Right out of, the worst horror movie logic possible, and just dumb characters. And it kind of took me out of the film for a bit. And then there's some, some logic things, I think, in terms of how this film gets resolved, but it does leave you on one of those really haunting kind of horror movie endings. Is it setting up for a sequel? Probably not. It could, though. If this made money, it would not stop Hollywood. But I felt like it set up this foreboding and ominous kind of resolution, because there's no joy in this movie. This is dread from start to finish, and it's very stark, and you see those things in Cooper's films, and it might be too much for people. This might be too much for people, but it really works well with the horror, even if it falls into some of those tropes and cliches. But this is a really effective film. It's a strikingly gorgeous film, and Scott Cooper, I think, brings enough life into this screenplay, and with the performances to boot, I think this is a really solid horror film, and enjoy it for the Halloween season. But those are my thoughts on Antlers. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.